Hello Australia and welcome back to What Lies in the Sunday Telegraph. We've had a little bit of a hiatus. For those who are new to the show, it's a pretty simple concept. I sit here with a copy of Australia's #1 selling newspaper. I read it, you listen, leave some comments. If you don't like the way I do things or my take on it, I look forward to hearing all about it. It really livens my week. So moving on, what do we have in the Telegraph? There is a woman in a white dress, which is a Sunday Telegraph favourite. Bearing in mind this is Australia's #1 selling newspaper. And it's a maths story. Married at First Sight. Reality scandal. My maths secret. Contact made me uncomfortable. Real reason TV wife quit show. So that's Poppy, the woman who referred to her two young children as Cock and Block. And yeah, can't say I was ever a huge fan of her on the show, but I'm look forward to hearing what the actor has to say. Oh, sorry, contestant. Participant in the experiment, maybe. What they have to say about their time inside the show. I do find that people who claim that the producers edited them unfairly and cruelly can go either way. You know, definitely the editors can edit people to show the very worst of them, but you have to give them something to work with. You know what I mean? Also, we're going to have radical new rules of the road. Linda Silmarlis, as a chief reporter, informs us that a drink drive limit of .02, point-to-point speed cameras for cars, and no warning signs around mobile traps are part of a new state government road safety push. They're also considering lowering some 100-kilometre-an-hour zones in the bush and having more 30-kilometre-an-hour zones in urban areas. Proposed changes are among a raft of road safety initiatives on the table at the state's first ever Towards Zero Road Safety Summit to be held on March 23. I do think there's no need to signal where speed cameras are. And also, up the top, we have Inside Doggy Disneyland, how a pet retreat saved this former war veteran's life. Apparently pages 8 to 9 as part of the dogsofoz.com.au section. Murdoch's realised people like dogs. Right, first page, second page of the paper. The inside page has been bought out by Woolworths with Stephanie Gilmore, world surfing champion, telling us that they're nurturing kids' appetites and their talents. That's why I pick Woolies. Some people can afford to do that, I guess. Some of us just have to buy the best, cheapest groceries we can get, so we go to Aldi. This podcast, vodcast, vlog, definitely a vlogger. This vlog not sponsored by Aldi. Right, bushfire widows are sharing grief and pride. Apparently that's news. I would be surprised if they were not, but there we go. MP's unusual excuse to cops: I'm a politician, get me out of fine. I don't think that's an unusual excuse. A Labor MP busted for failing to stop at a stop sign, allegedly told police she deserves to get off with a warning because she's a politician. Now, we're talking here apparently about Bankstown MP Tania Mihailuk, which could be she just doesn't know how to go about greasing these wheels. Apparently she lobbied the finance minister to overturn the decision around a $350 fine, which that's not cool. Apparently she already had marks on her traffic history, leaving no room for leniency. I mean, I don't mind politicians getting caught out for this sort of thing. I just find it a bit suspicious when the ones who do get caught are the ones who don't quite fit in. Right, apparently Deborah Lee Furness, that's Hugh Jackman's wife, is going to direct 3 episodes of Neighbours. Apparently she's played a small guest role years ago. There's the rest of the article goes on about what the storyline's about. Deborah Lee Furness is also an activist wanting Australia to relax adoption laws, which would open the doors to child trafficking, but would mean women like her get to raise babies in Australia more easily. Priorities. Now, unusually, Mixed Picks is on page 4. This is the best things that are in the newspaper, according to the editor. The Body and Soul Health Guide is turning 20, so there you go. That's the best thing in the paper. Just the goose egg rolling over. Right, in her first interview in nearly 5 years, Chrissy Swan tells us how learning to say no helped completely change her life. Number 3 is the Dogs of Oz. I think they've made a mistake there. They should have that, number 1. And apparently there are new delicious drinks available in 2020. A watermelon and gin slushy will take the edge off a long summer day. Not that we're supporting binge drinking. The travel section's covering food tourism. And there's the Battle for Balmoral, amazing account of how heroic firefighters saved dozens of lives from a raging inferno. A must read. And there's a quite cute burned koala wearing little mittens as he recovers. That's good. Headline, too much to bear. Not a bear. Double the fun. Make sure you tell the kids there's a double giveaway in this week's Fun Day. Very young and the very old, the last refuge of the newspaper. Okay, end the carnage. Drastic measures needed to cut the road toll to zero. And then using the Abdallah family, whose children were killed by an allegedly drunken driver, as the picture there with the dead kids' faces pixelated out. That is creepy as anything you're ever going to see. I don't know what passed for editorial judgment. I mean, I know the argument, there's always someone saying, oh, we need human faces. But to be literally erasing the dead because of your child protection laws, just don't use the picture. Just don't. It's not that important. Ugh. Sunday Telegraph, erasing the young dead's faces. Apparently the police are going to lay extra charges on the driver. And then there's another story of a hit-and-run victim who was on a care visit to a 103-year-old mum. Now we get to the real news, the Married at First Sight couple scandal. Poppy Jennings says she left the top-rating reality TV show after contacts between her and her on-screen husband, Luke Eglin, made her feel uncomfortable. In an exclusive video interview, Poppy Jennings said she felt uneasy being around Mr. Eglin after 2 separate scenes. Ms. Jennings claimed her concerns were not taken seriously by the program and she was encouraged to share a bedroom when she did not feel comfortable doing so. It is understood Mr. Eglin denies any wrongdoing. Speaking exclusively for the first time, Ms. Jennings said her life had been hell after leaving the show because the reason for her early departure had not been properly explained. I left the show because I was incredibly uncomfortable with some things that unfolded, she said. I mean, she did go on a fake getting married show, which does involve the contestants regularly talking about how they have sex with each other, which is not to say she should do anything that she does not consent to at all. Right, Mr. Egling said, honestly, I'm not going to comment about anything about this because she has blown up and she just needs her own space. She just needs to move on like I have, and that's it, and that's as good as it is. I don't know where you are getting all of this from. We are finished on the show, and that's as far as it goes. That seems like a reasonably sensible and mature way to deal with this. Oh, then we have a few paragraphs explaining what Married at First Sight is for the Telegraph reader who doesn't watch Channel 9. Yeah, in telling her own side of the story, Ms. Jennings isn't actually telling her own side of the story, which makes it very hard for anyone to understand what's going on. Okay, 2 pages on Dog Heaven, part of the dogsofoz.com.au. So apparently this guy's built a 13-hectare purpose-built farm on the New South Wales Central Coast. Busloads of dogs arrive from Sydney to spend the best day of their lives. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I wish there was a place like that I could go. Apparently dogs on a train are a thing. Apparently member for Sydney Alex Greenwich has been petitioning the state government for 2 years to change the rules so that dogs are fully allowed on public transport and the trains. Certainly would make life easier for dog owners who don't have cars. It's always a fear that you can't get to the vet when you need to. Okay, Annika Smethurst has twigged to the backdoor entry for Chinese students. This is for the year 11 and 12 students who come to Australia. Okay, this isn't. University of Western Sydney was caught doing a very dodgy advice about travel to third-party countries and paying for that travel. Right, this is about being able to apply for an exemption if you do a quarantine period so they can get them in for the start of semester. Right, rugby league player David Fafita's got his story claiming he was set up by corrupt police in Bali, which... I'm not saying there are no corrupt police in Bali, just saying it's weird how the high-profile rugby league player came under their attention. Can't have been because he did anything to attract that. Well, maybe he didn't. You never know in these cases. I just know the Sunday Telegraph isn't going to tell me the truth. Oh, let's call it 2 pages. There is a big ad on the terrible, tragic death of Hannah Clark and her children. Apparently her protection order had been downgraded a month before. Miranda Wood is opining that we need to call it a murder, not just a domestic. There's a lot of issues about making sure these things are recorded in the right columns so that the enormity of the toll is presented. I think in cases like this, we could easily, have the same case in multiple files. Alright, so a Thai woman has faced court over an alleged $9 million fraud and money laundering ring after being arrested by a New South Wales police strike force. Annika Smethurst reports that the aged care watchdog is failing to conduct random nursing home inspections at times when elderly residents are at the greatest risk of abuse. And only 7 of 2,000 searches were conducted outside of business hours. Tough one. I mean, cost more money to hire the staff to work out of hours. Do you want to get more inspections done? A lot of the stuff they're inspecting for, I would say, the in-hours, out-of-hours isn't as important. Yeah, maybe they need to, I don't know. I'm not sure that's the problem. Right, apparently Icebergs is offering rare 2-course $40 meals, a one-off deal. Alright, Gary Jubelin is continuing to spill the tea on the way the police work. He's talking about the terrible Barraville tragedy when 3 children were murdered, 3 Indigenous children were murdered. Grieving families, 30-year fight for empathy. In 34 years as a cop, I've learned how racist Australia can be. When 3 kids were murdered in Barraville, their families were treated differently because they were black. It seems little has changed, writes Gary Jubelin. Writing also, the very strange day I found myself in a Black Lives Matter demonstration. Look, I think it's great that the Sunday Telegraph is talking about institutional racism. I think it's a bit weird that we only do it when Gary Jubelin wants to talk about it, but, you know, good on Gary for that. I just think that the inherent racism of this paper's done so much to propagate these attitudes, but I guess I want them to actually stop being as bad, so I guess I should salute this move in a somewhat positive direction via a somewhat flawed character in Mr. Jubelin. Bikie kicked out of club over child sex charges. A high-ranking bikie gang member was booted out of the club after it emerged he had sex with a 12-year-old girl, a move he claims he hates himself for. Bikie enforcer Husa Hasanovic, 28, was in the throes of alcohol and drug addiction when he met the young girl on a platform at Western Sydney train station on Valentine's Day last year. So apparently he was Sergeant-at-Arms of the Nomads Outlaw Motorcycle Club. So it's good to see that our outlaw motorcycle gangs are enforcing community standards. We've also got a story on bullying. The 10-year-old boy who performs in a dress, the bullies can't drag me down. He's been called a freak and a fairy and trolled on social media, but 10-year-old Jack Kahn tackles the haters and bullies head-on wearing glitzy high heels and perfectly set wig and bright pink lipstick. A perfectly set wig. So hard to set a wig. That is perfect. I want people who have been bullied to know they're not alone. The Mount Ousley Public School student said, I'm not sure I'll be putting a 10-year-old in the paper identified this way. I think it's great if whatever hobbies he enjoys, but that seems dangerous to me. Customers fighting for their Freedom order. Furious Freedom Furniture customers have been left waiting for months for orders that have either been jumbled up or significantly delayed. The popular furniture chain is blaming its new multi-million-dollar order management system provided by technology giant IBM, which it said had been riddled with problems since it rolled out last year. Customers in limbo waiting for their furniture. God, I haven't darkened a Freedom's doorstep in 20 years, but okay, it's still working, was working for some people. Sydney drug users are sitting ducks in an international illicit fentanyl epidemic, which has already killed hundreds of people in the US. Potentially fatal risk of fentanyl-related substances that look like powdered party drugs. Officials said they'd recently seen several people suffering serious harm after taking acetyl fentanyl. We are sitting ducks and the message to people is to be wary, Michael Farrell said. Annika Smethurst is covering the excellent jobs for the 20 federal Liberal MPs who quit or lost their jobs since the 2013 election. Yeah, well, there's a code of silence. You got to take care of them, don't you? So Jane Hanson's got a story on the health crisis. Parents who can't afford private health insurance are forced to watch their children suffer on long waiting lists to see specialists and have essential surgery. This message brought to you by the health insurance industry of Australia. Right, still Jane Hanson. Heart of a huge feud over doctors. The decision to restore cardiac services at Sydney Children's Hospital was supposed to end a public battle with the Children's Hospital Westmead. Instead, it seems to have triggered more bitterness. I think life is too short to follow that any further. More pictures of cute koalas, also with bear headlines, in this case bearing up well. They are not bears. Hashtag not a bear. And the good news is burned koalas are getting better. In fact, it's the same story, And in fact, I noticed one of these pictures is the one we had earlier. Property developers are getting angry that they're not involved to get involved in politics, not allowed to get involved in politics. Strathfield Mayor and property developer Anton Duhay has blasted his party's moves to ban property developers and real estate agents from running on local councils. Brothel owners get more rights than us. Well, brothel owners corrupt the political system less often than you guys, don't they? Bit of a track record has led to that policy, mate. Oh dear, here's a business getting destroyed. Taxing times for the Grounds. The glamorous eatery The Grounds is wildly popular, but behind the scenes is struggling for millions in unpaid tax. Apparently liquidators have come in, that's why it's getting reported on. Yeah. Apparently it's the place to take your Instagram photos if that's what you're into. Josh Frydenberg's off to Saudi Arabia. I'm not quite sure why that's buried on page 26 along with the catering news. G20 meeting of finance ministers. Riyadh meeting will discuss challenges and opportunities in the global economy, just like every single time they meet. It's just to discuss challenges and opportunities. Nothing concrete, never anything about international tax evasion. So the source, political gossip with Annika, Linda and Miranda. The Scroobies rock family ties. So the source can reveal Pedestrian Council of Australia Chairman Harold Scrooby is related to one of the most famous singers of all time, Elvis Presley. I guarantee you Harold is the one who has informed the source. The Presley connection comes via Scrooby's uncle, the late Morton Smith Peterson, whose grandson Ben is married to Presley's granddaughter Riley Keough. That is a tenuous old connection. The Pedestrian Council of Australia. As a pedestrian, I've always been intrigued by it because no one has ever invited me to join the Pedestrian Council or vote for its leadership. It's a strange, strange institution. Right, apparently political gossip includes that Barry Cassidy's taken his chair with him when he left Insiders. They didn't want it when they did the set redesign. New South Wales Nationals leader John Barilaro has a new Deputy Chief of Staff. That's got passes for political gossip, apparently. More on the developer panic has erupted among Liberal council candidates amid concerns the party may not endorse them. Okay, and CSL, it's Commonwealth Serum Labs, I believe it stood for once, which is a big mover in the biotech world. Apparently it was briefly Australia's most capitalised stock last week. Has taken Bill Shorten's staff for Joe Cleary to work for them. Good luck to her. Right, so we're having our first look inside Parramatta Square, a development that will change the West, as in the west of Sydney. Telegraph says shoppers still prefer the shops. There's a story for the boomers. Australians overwhelmingly prefer to shop in stores rather than online, research has revealed. Well, not all of them. So there's a story about a former rugby league player, Ron Coote, and his experience in the fires. There's a theory why train crashed. No, we're not going to report on the truth, just hey, here's someone with a theory. The theory is that live signal testing was being conducted when the derailment happened between Sydney and Melbourne. Boy, yep, okay, well I look forward to the Australian Transport Safety Bureau report on that, because that would be big. Apparently prisoners are so desperate for good food behind bars they are using their own money to buy and smuggle fresh veggies into the facility. I personally would wonder if those vegetables concealed drugs, but I guess when your body is a temple working away in the gyms, you might want a better class of food. The Snitch, Law and Order gossip. It's only February, but there's already a strong contender for this year's dumbest defendant. Police allege the man in question tried to hold up a supermarket in Ayers in Sydney's southwest in late January with nothing but a plastic bag and a good old-fashioned finger gun. Right, it didn't work. Finger guns are no good, they just tell you to bugger off. Show me the gun. Okay, real estate. Wayne Bennett is beefing up his portfolio in southern Queensland. I do love when we get just told, oh, here's celebrity people doing stuff you do, or we want you to do. The world of luxury. Oh, right, because the World is the world's largest private residential ship that is docked in Sydney, full of the rich bastards on board. Okay, there's a new book out called Australian Codebreakers by James Phelps, which is an important subject that I probably not going to bother reading the book, but I'm glad someone wrote it. Apparently 9 out of 10 children with congenital heart disease now survive. That's good news too. Right, the battle for Balmoral is the centre spread, and then we're into sport and lift-outs. Life's too short for lift-outs. Still plugging away with a TV guide that just happens to plug Foxtel. It's funny. how you feel the need to make a TV guide when you run TV stations. Well, I've got to say, with Married at First Sight on, I have had to consult the TV guide because it keeps quite odd hours. Not that I don't watch at least 50% of the time on catch-up service. So. And yes, I'm not too proud to say I indulge in the horror that is Married at First Sight. Just to get a sense of that world. Right, Ian Chappell gives us the lowdown on the T20 World Cup. Women's T20 World Cup. Nothing to do with Foxtel showing it, I'm sure. Okay, more on Gary Jubelin talking about racism in the police. It's quite a theme, just have one reporter with so many stories in one paper. Alright, apparently men's IVF rates fall off with age. Who'd have thought? Unreliable housemates, not doing you credit. Unreliable housemates could be costing you thousands of dollars a year in bills and rent, a new study reveals. Yeah, life's tough when you're living in share houses. I'm glad the papers twigged to that. Time is running out to contain the coronavirus. Let's have a bit of a scare. We're into world news now. The Afghan truce begins. That's good to know. A 7-day period of reduced violence. That's all we can really hope for. Between the militant Taliban and Afghan government forces and their international allies has started. Re-elected Afghan President Ashraf Ghani announced the starting time in a televised speech. Mike Pompeo has declared the US had reached an understanding with the militant Taliban about a significant reduction in violence. All Afghan forces would be in active defense positions and would closely monitor the situation. And operations against other terrorist groups like Islamic State and Al-Qaeda would continue. So I'm really not be interested to see if there's anything comes out of that. Dateline Boise, a dispute at a senior citizen's apartment complex escalated into a shootout in Idaho. An 87-year-old man opened fire on 3 women, killing 1 and injuring 2 others before fatally shooting himself. Nordberg, who uses a walker, had an argument with the women, then slowly returned to his unit to get a handgun and open fire. Which just comes down to handguns let people make mistakes at a terrifying speed. Which is why we shouldn't be allowed to have them. Certainly in nursing homes. I mean, I know it's the US and their gun laws are insane and we do this all the time, but yeah, when the day comes, don't put me in a nursing home with guns. Not because I'm saying I'm going to be violent, I'm worried about the other people who I will annoy, because I'm very annoying. Peter Credlin says it's a recipe for disaster. Labor's uncosted climate policies coupled with a failing education system does not bode well for our future. Yes, education needs more funding. No, shouldn't be going to private schools. So Labor's policy is completely inadequate, shifting all the heavy lifting out to 2050 in any action plan that has a longer horizon than 2030 is inadequate, and the human race is going to suffer enormous destruction, let alone our tiny bit of what we call civilization. Yeah, so anytime anyone's talking 2050, not 2030, at this point I would say ignore them. A plan to 2040 has some merit, but only if there are 2025 and 2030 milestones. And also Labor's got no plan to tackle fossil fuel exports, which makes up something like twice Australia's domestic emissions. So, blah. Peter Credlin, bad person, working for the coal industry, trying to destroy life as we know it. JP Morgan had a really big analyst report just yesterday saying this is going to be a major threat to life as we know it. And JP Morgan, bear in mind, built the fossil fuel industry as we know it. So even they're waking up, but Peter's going to be the last to flip. Just giving a thumbs up to John Barilaro for attacking a Liberal who dared to do something about climate change. And then a thumbs down, ostensibly to the murder of Hannah Clark and her children, but then going on to attack domestic violence campaigners. Saying it's just violence, needs to be treated as just violence. Causes are a bit more complicated, aren't they? Peter Gleeson on the next page goes on to say, we must end the violence. Lucy Khan says, we want anything to stop this hell of domestic violence, but then noting, what can be done? What could possibly make a difference this desperately painful national crisis? And then Piers Ackerman is coming in with no cause so vile he won't defend it, to try and stand up for Detective Inspector Mark Thompson, who some would say rather foolishly, including, I believe, himself and his bosses, rather foolishly tried to see the dude's point of view in the horrific incineration of a woman and her children. Claire Harvey's complaining that Michelle Bridges didn't get a big enough jail sentence for her drink driving charge. And Gladys Berejiklian tells us we're building on the legacy of heroes as we honour our firefighters. Sunday Telegraph editorial says, we did a great job with that story Anarchist Medhurst broke about government surveillance. Okay, we're invited to taste the rainbow of Mardi Gras. Lots of rainbow-themed foods. Apparently a couple has had a pink-themed wedding. They're very excited about that. All right, movies. Harrison Ford's Call of the Wild gets 2.5 stars, which is a shame because I really love that book. Edward Norton's Motherless Brooklyn, 3.5. Miss Fisher and the Crypt of Tears gets 3. Never ever got into the Miss Fisher stuff. All right, and Shia LaBeouf's vehicle, Honey Boy, gets 4 stars from the notoriously hard markers of the Sunday Telegraph. Book Club. What's the book of the week? Will it be from the HarperCollins imprint, also owned by the Murdoch family that owns this newspaper? Yes, it is. There we go. Perth-based crime writer Dervla McTiernan, author of The Ruin and The Scholar. The HarperCollins Australia author is from Ireland originally, where the novels are set. This one's called The Good Turn. It's definitely the best book out this week from HarperCollins. So apparently dog grooming used to be for ex-criminals. I did not know that. Duncan Lay's trying to rev up excitement for The Walking Dead. Still pining for Westeros, obviously. The fact that it's a Foxtel vehicle probably had nothing to do with the 2 pages they've given it. Duncan Lay's also trying to compare Miranda Tapsell playing Kerry the Possum in the animated feature The Wishmas Tree with the Hunger Games Katniss Everdeen. I don't think that's a wise comparison, much as I admire Miranda Tapsell. Duncan, still dominating the entertainment pages, is offering the MRA view on Birds of Prey, which I note is dividing opinion between pimply male nerds and feminists who do quite like the movie. Odd that there would be a divide on that on a movie where women are all the leads. Harry Shearer is doing stuff for Australian bushfires, which is nice. He gets a whole page on it. The fact he's best known for The Simpsons, which is a Fox vehicle owned by the Murdochs. Nothing to do with that, I'm sure. Kesha's back in the pop game. Oh, this is sad. Marriage split for rugby star George Gregan after 22 years with his wife and business partner Erica. That is going to be a tough breakup for him and her. I wish them well. Apparently James Packer is welcoming Ched back into the inner sanctum. His poker buddies are reconciling after a 3-year schism. Good for him. I actually do wish James Packer some happiness, mostly because if he's happy, he might do some good for the country. Right, James Weir is devoting more pages to Michelle Bridges. And the back page is devoted to The Walking Dead, desperately trying to get anyone watching Foxtel. Which I am keeping on just for John Oliver and a bit of rugby. Hopefully, the rugby rights will be with some... Oh, God, look how dirty my fingers are after reading the Sunday Telegraph. Ugh. Paper that makes you dirty. Okay, folks, thank you very much. We've been returning from a little summer break, and thank you if you have made it this far. Do be sure to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Only if you think it's something they might enjoy. Those who won't enjoy it, I'd rather not hear from. And on that note, we'll see you all next week. Thank you.